want to say a few words about Canaanite religion. Now, all that we know about Canaanite religion, really up to the beginning of the 20th century, what we knew from the biblical text. And while I'm not saying the Bible's not a reliable source in this regard, it is certainly a slanted source in this regard. It would be akin to going to the Republican National Committee's website to see what Democrats believe, or going to the Democratic National Committee website to see what Republicans believe. The Bible is resoundingly against Canaanite religion, so it is certainly a slanted source. We consider that. In 1929, a cache of text was discovered at Ugarit, the ancient city of Ugarit, the modern city of Ras Shamra. There we found Canaanite worship texts, which are basically their hymn books. So you can find a little bit about what they believe. Some of it we knew from the biblical text. For example, it is fertility-based. Most of the ancient religions were fertility-based. Fertility was important. You needed fertility for your crops. You needed fertility for yourself. We have no 401ks or Social Security. Your children are your inheritance. They're your labor force. And so very, very important to have that fertility. The chief god was El, but very quickly El becomes supplanted by a sort of, mysterious god who blows in from out of town, the god of the storm named Baal. Baal is the storm god, the symbol of all that was virile and masculine in ancient Canaan. His consort was Asherah. She was a fertility goddess. There were several goddesses in ancient Canaanite pantheon, but probably Asherah is the one that's most directly related to the biblical text. Anat and Astarte are also Canaanite fertility goddesses, but Asherah, the most common mentioned and referenced in the Bible. Strong emphasis on sexuality. The ancient Canaanites practiced what's known as sympathetic magic. The idea is if you do something on a small scale, you're hoping the gods will do it on a large scale. So a voodoo doll is an act of sympathetic magic. You're doing something on the small scale and hope that it'll affect the large scale. But to do that, when you want an act of fertility, well, you want to perform an act of fertility. So there was cultic prostitution as part of the Canaanite religion. Young women were given into servitude to the local shrines, and there would be ritualized sexual cultic prostitution. As you've probably already deduced, it's certainly polytheistic. But because it's fertility-based, it follows the seasons. It is a cyclical sort of religion. Every year, Baal dies every spring, and he is resurrected every fall. The weather, that corresponds to the weather in Israel, in modern Israel. In Israel, it doesn't rain between between April and October. That is very late to get a shower in May. It doesn't rain at all. Rains from October to April. So every October, Baal is resurrected. Every April, he is killed by the god of death. So this cyclical dying and rising god represents those seasons. One of the real insidious things about Canaanite worship and Canaanite religion was it seemed to hold the clues to the land's fertility. You didn't get rid of all the Canaanites in the conquest. There's still Canaanites in the land, and they seem to know how to grow plants. This has been this way for generations. So A, it seemed to hold the secret to the land's fertility, and B, probably one of the more insidious things, it wasn't a jealous religion. By that I mean, Baal never said, "You must turn away from Yahweh and worship me." Baal said, No, you can worship Yahweh, just have me too. And so people began to cover their bets. They want to stay faithful to Yahweh. They want to worship only Yahweh, but the flour starts getting low, and there's no Walmart, there's no Jewel, there's no Kroger, there's no way to get any groceries. And so you start to worry a little bit, and you start to want to cover your bets, so you start to worship at the temple of Baal. And then even more insidious is probably one of the most dangerous sins ever, and that is syncretism. People began to stop thinking in terms of Yahweh and Baal and started to combine those ideas together so that the worship of Yahweh is worshipped like Baal. You have inscriptions found in parts of Israel in the 9th century that say that blessed be Yahweh and his Asherah. In other words, that Baal's consort has now become Yahweh's consort because they're basically the same thing. So that worship gets combined together. It's one of the most insidious sins that you can ever imagine, and it sneaks in without you knowing about it. We very often will marry our religion and culture and the worship of God and culture, political concerns, military concerns, economic concerns, even other dogmatic religious concerns, put in the mouth of Yahweh, and very soon that that syncretism can lead to a very slanted or misunderstood way of looking at God. That is what happens to ancient Israel, and to be perfectly honest, that's what happens to us as well.